Passwords are oftentimes the main defense against unauthorized access to a computer system or sensitive data, and attackers have a variety of methods they can use to crack users' passwords. Some of the more common methods are social engineering, brute force attacks, and rainbow attacks. In this lesson, I'll go over how these attacks work and how you can defend against them. Social engineering is the art of manipulating the weakest link in network security, which is the human element. A skilled attacker can use social engineering to learn a user's password through password guessing, user manipulation, or shoulder surfing. Guessing a user's password can be difficult, but there are techniques that an attacker can use to make this simpler. The first thing an attacker might do is try default logins and common passwords like password123. An attacker might also use social media to gather personal information such as pet names, family, first car, birthday, and more. Then the attacker uses this information to answer security questions and reset the password itself. An attacker might also try to interact with the user to trick them into revealing their password. For example, they might call the user pretending to be a technician with an urgent problem for which they need the user's password to resolve it. Attackers continue to use this method because, surprisingly, it's still very easy. An attacker might also use social engineering to gain physical access to an office building. Once inside, they look around for login information that users have written down. Unfortunately, many users write their login information on a sticky pad and put it on their monitor or under their mouse pad. This makes it fairly easy for an attacker to find. Attackers also go dumpster diving to find these notes that might have been inadvertently thrown away. These people aren't above searching through your trash to gain access to your personal information. Shoulder surfing is a passive technique where the attacker simply watches a user's keystrokes as they type their user password. This requires access to the user, but it can be accomplished with social engineering. Your best defense against these kinds of password attacks is education. You must be trained on how to handle these situations. You should know emphatically that no one will ever need to ask you for your passwords, and that you should never carelessly write your login information down. With proper user training, attackers have to resort to more technical means to crack passwords. A brute force password attack can be a very time-consuming proposition. The attacker attempts to guess passwords by using a cracking tool that submits every possible letter, number, and symbol combination in a short amount of time. These attacks can be carried out online or offline. An online brute force attack requires the attacker to submit passwords with the same user interface while the target is up and running. If the attacker targets a website, they keep submitting logins to the site interface. If the attacker targets a computer, they submit the logins to the login screen. The best defense against online brute force attacks is to implement lockout policies. This means that if someone enters an incorrect password multiple times in a short period, the system locks them out for a certain amount of time. An offline brute force attack requires the attacker to somehow steal the password file and then run their attacks on it. This potentially gives the attacker unlimited attempts to run their attack, but it's much more difficult to pull off because they have to first get that password file. Password spraying is another type of brute force attack that someone can use to get around lockout policies. Instead of attacking one account, the attacker submits a password to multiple user accounts. If none of those work, the attacker submits a different password to multiple accounts. Because there's a delay between submitting passwords on each account, the lockout policy is essentially circumvented. A dictionary attack is yet another type of brute force attack. In this attack, the hacker compiles a huge list of words and phrases that can be used to guess the password. Weak and common passwords, such as password123, are extremely vulnerable to dictionary attacks. Brute force attacks require a lot of time and computing power to be effective. This is why hackers use programs like John the Ripper, Hashcat, Medusa, and Cain and Abel to facilitate the process. Implementing proper password protocols is your best defense in these scenarios. A strong password should be at least 8 characters, but more is always better. It should also contain upper and lowercase letters, numbers, and symbols. It shouldn't contain common words and phrases. The longer and more complex your password is, the more time and effort it takes to brute force it. Also, strongly consider using passphrases instead of passwords. When you store a plain text password, it's encrypted and generates a hash. Rainbow attacks are similar to dictionary attacks, but instead of trying to match up words and phrases, a rainbow attack uses tables that are already filled with word lists and their hashes. Rainbow attacks require less computing power and are much faster than a brute force and dictionary attacks. A rainbow table is a table of passwords and generated hashes. The hacker uses this table to match the password's hash instead of the password itself. For example, let's say that a user's password is rainbow, and this is the generated hash. In the hacker's rainbow table, the password security pro generates the same hash value. This is a hash collision, and the hacker could gain access to the system by sending the hash value without having the actual password itself. The biggest drawback to rainbow tables is their size. Since different systems use different hashing algorithms, a table needs to be created for each target system. The necessary character sets also greatly increase the table's sizes. A single table can range from 30 gigabytes to over 300. The best way to defend against rainbow attacks is to salt your hashes. Salting the hash just means that some random characters are added at the beginning or the end of the password, which ends up generating a completely different hash. The login server knows which part of the hash is salted, but anyone who intercepts the hash has no idea. People use programs like RTGen, WinRTGen, and RainbowCrack to create rainbow tables and tools like OffCrack to crack passwords using these tables. That'll wrap up this lesson. In this lesson, we looked at different password attacks you might encounter. We first looked at social engineering methods, which target the users themselves. Then we covered brute force and dictionary attacks. These methods are essentially attempts at guessing passwords. Remember that these methods take quite a long time and usually require sophisticated computing power and knowledge to pull off. Finally, we looked at rainbow attacks. These attacks attempt to match password hashes instead of having to guess the actual password.